Today's podcast is brought to you by Blue Canary. The bird has landed on beautiful Bainbridge Island, conveniently located at 499 Madison Avenue. ASE Master Technician Clint Ramsey brings over 15 years of experience, award-winning diagnostic skill, and a desire to reinvent the automotive repair experience. Schedule an appointment online at bluecanary.biz or call them today at 206-451-4220.
Hey, it's Michael Fabiano here from SI.com, and I'm excited about the upcoming launch of the SI Fantasy Podcast. Myself, along with Dr. Roto and the Fantasy Executive, will get you ready for your fantasy drafts in 2020 and guide you to fantasy football glory. Get on board with the SI Fantasy Podcast and win your fantasy football league.
This segment of the B.I.Stander Podcast is brought to you by Eagle Harbor Insurance. We don't sell insurance, we help people buy it. This has always been their motto and continues. They understand every family has different insurance needs, be it coverage or premiums. No two cases are the same, and they will always do their best to guide you into the proper coverage to fit your budget. They are here to help anytime. Give them a call at 206-842-7410 or contact them online at eagleharborinsurance.com.
I'm Maria Metzler, the Executive Director of Helpline House. The global pandemic has affected us all differently. If you or your neighbors need food assistance, mental health counseling, rental assistance, or Parks and Rec vouchers, please reach out. Helpline House can help in many ways. Find us on the web at helplinehouse.org. It's what we do. Neighbor helping neighbor.
The B.I.Stander Podcast, in partnership with Bainbridge Strong and the Island's own Pegasus Coffee Company, is proud to offer this special release whole bean blend for a limited time. A medium dark roast of coffees from Colombia, Ethiopia, and Sumatra. It offers a balanced, full-bodied cup perfect for virtually any pairing or occasion. $5 from the sale of each 12-ounce bag will go to Bainbridge-based small business or nonprofit of your choice at checkout. I got something for your mind, body, and soul. I got something for your mind, body, and soul.
You have found the B.I.Stander Podcast. Now here's your host with the most, Tiny Tim.
What's cracking, Podcastville? You found the B.I.Stander Podcast. Today, I have Greg Nance, the man who once ran 7 marathons in 7 days on 7 continents and still hasn't slowed down one bit. Greg, you're a hard man to catch, both on the track and in the neighborhood lately. I've seen you a few times running by me while I'm walking dogs in your neighborhood when you first start off, but when you first started off, you're at a
30.
fast clip. What's good?
It is great to see you, Tim. Thanks for having me back. I am really, really fired up to have a chance to reconnect and share some of the latest and greatest over on this neck of the woods.
Yeah, well, let's, before we get too deep in conversation, let's talk about this virtual dinner that's going on Thursday, October 22nd for Bainbridge Youth Services.
Yeah, I'm glad. Yeah. So BYS is hosting its fall fundraiser, Give Hope 2020, turning struggles into strength, this Thursday. And I think it's going to be a really, really amazing evening, showcasing the awesome work that BYS is doing to advance youth mental health on the island and throughout Kitsap County. COVID has been hard on all of us, and many folks that are, teenagers, adolescents, particularly with so much of their studies and their social lives disrupted. BYS is filling a key gap there, trying to raise funds for 800 hours of counseling, which would just be amazing. So that kids that need to talk to somebody, need to vent, need to soundboard, just need help and support. And I am really honored for the opportunity to support this myself and to share a little bit of my story and how, as a teenager growing up on Bainbridge Island, I could have used a BYS counselor to actually work through some of the tough stuff that I was going through. Like all of us, we hit bumps in the road, and having a counselor, a guide there can make all the difference. And BYS is making that happen.
So is this a anonymous hotline that they can call for counseling?
It's confidential, yes, but it's even better than an anonymous hotline. It's the chance to actually connect with a certified counselor for one-to-one mental health counseling and to actually talk through. So you can really build a relationship with a counselor who's certified. They're a real professional, medically trained, and they can guide you step by step through whatever you're going through, even if it's just a vent or a soundboard. If you need some advice on something, it can make all the difference. So it's there on the BYS website, askbys.org, or connecting through the actual center across from BHS and the Aquatic Center.
And this is Thursday, 7:00 via Zoom, their annual dinner, correct?
That is right. Yep.
Now, how are we going to eat through Zoom? I want to know that one.
Yeah, so I've heard that a couple local businesses have really stepped up, and so to help like sponsor and to be really supportive, including a couple restaurants.
Let's shout them out.
Yeah, me and my family. Yeah, I know one of them at least. We're going to be ordering a big pizza from West Side and eating that while enjoying a really nice evening together. And I think there's a couple options too. So if you're not as into pizza like me, you can find something else delicious too.
Who doesn't like pizza?
I know. Come on.
So you have been up to a lot of things, I noticed, besides just running past me and saying, "Go Hawks." You spent some time putting in miles for every day that you've been sober. How many miles was that? And was that in the month of September?
Yeah. So I celebrated a birthday recently, and I love to do a run on my birthday. So yeah, I did a big lap around Lake Washington, was the most recent big one, 51 miles in 9 hours, 33 minutes around the lake. And fun adventure. I'd actually never done anything quite like that. So really nice way to see Seattle. And then the month before, on August 18th, I had a chance to do a big lap around Bainbridge Island shoreline, all within the high tide sphere. So it was, that was just a really cool way to see my hometown with a totally different vantage, totally, a new angle and a new perspective that gives me a big new appreciation for the special place that we call home.
Now, how'd you figure out, you're being way too modest again.
That's rare. So.
No, it's not. The island, is 45 miles around? I read it's 53 miles of shoreline, though I ended up doing 47 miles because I cut Fletcher Bay because it was low tide there. So I was able to run through kind of like hip deep water, which knocked out a couple miles luckily and helped speed me up. So how do you figure out the tide flats and the timing of this whole run? Because for people that don't live on or near Bainbridge Island here, it's usually low tide at 10:30 somewhere on the island, but not everywhere. And there's some really deep spots and very rugged terrain. How did you go about figuring all that out?
Yeah, so this has been literally a lifelong dream for me to do it. So I've been slowly scouting, including, at high tide, like, hey, where does the water come up? And the short answer is it's really, really high. In fact, the water can be higher than your head. So you're swimming or drowning out there. And then at low tide, as you put it, there are big mud flats, especially in like Eagle Harbor and Port Madison, Fletcher Bay. And so, and in Manzanita too. So that's the hardest part for me because I can deal with a little bit of water. It's harder when you're sinking knee deep. And so my dad and I actually did a fun little DIY project together. He's really handy. We went to the lumber yard at Lumberman's and we got some scrap wood and we actually created what are known as mud pattens, which are like these, it's kind of like snowshoes, but to stay on top of mud instead of snow. And so it's this 13th century British technology for folks that would go like clamming in England in historic times. And the technology still works today. You get a foot by foot flat wooden plank, and then actually you get rope and you tie little knots underneath, and then you tie them over your shoes in a special formation using special knots that I learned from YouTube. And that worked great. Like I was able to cross Port Madison without too much incident. It was still tiring because you're sinking half an inch instead of half a foot. But that made a big difference. So I was able to cruise through there comparatively, and a lot of scouting, a little bit of prep, a little bit of gear, creation, and then a little bit of a thick skull certainly helps too.
Yeah, you had some poles too for some of that?
Yeah. Very fortunate.
Did you fall and hit your head or anything?
I took a small spill in Eagle Harbor. So I started just at like sunrise, and so like the sun's starting to come up, which coincided with a plus 6 foot tide as the tide is going out, which I calculated to be the best time to begin because you're able to get underneath the ferry docks. And if you've ever played around Eagle Harbor, you may have noticed like there's kind of a claustrophobia inducing dockyard that you've got to crawl under. If you're trying to do a big lap around the island. So that was a bit of a scary thing because I'm claustrophobic, but I calculated plus 6 would be a good time to go under that, which it was. But then within a mile of that, I snapped my trekking pole. It ended up getting stuck between 2 rocks, and I'm trying to cruise through the water, and the force of my momentum cracked it. And so luckily I had a couple friends there on the shoreline, my friends Reba and Luis and Pete, and they started making calls at 6:30 in the morning. And one of their friends miraculously drove up and dropped off this extra trekking pole for me. And so I was able to still move forward. And it was just a really special moment where even though I'm the one out there running, I was never alone. There were always folks, cheering, supporting, and there even when I need emergency gear, water, food. It was really just a special feeling as you're giving it your all, knowing that, hey, I've got just a wonderful team up on the shore there to guide me too.
Since you've been stuck at home here on Bainbridge Island and not in your regular home in Shanghai, have you felt like Islanders have become more aware of your presence?
Oh, it's been fun. I mean, I grew up here, so it's always just awesome, like reconnecting with old friends. I've met a number of old friends as parents, which is lots of fun out and about. And then I'm a man on a mission. I'm working on some stuff that I'm really passionate about, and so it's been just wonderful that the incredibly supportive, encouraging community that I remember from my boyhood as, a local baseball player, a local debater, it's just like that now. And in fact, maybe it's even more supportive and even more encouraging. So yeah, it's been wonderful reconnecting there and just remembering, wow, I always had the fondest recollection of this amazing place. And 12 years later returning, it's even more special than, my memory.
That's awesome. I'm glad to hear that. You're trying to raise some awareness on mental health and addiction struggles. What are some of the projects surrounding those two topics?
Yeah, so I had a chance to share a little bit about BYS, which I'm a big booster. I'm a huge fan of the work they're doing because I could have used that. When I was 16, I went through some really tough stuff around my granddad had a debilitating stroke, and I didn't feel like I had someone to talk to. Even though I had wonderful friends, I had a girlfriend, I just didn't feel like I could share that, and I really could have used counseling like BYS offers. I am on a mission to explore our mental health and addiction challenges, which I believe are silent epidemics. Rightfully, COVID-19 is getting a lot of attention, and we're learning a lot about this issue as a nation. However, there are other big issues that we are facing that don't make the headlines nearly as often, but I think are really, really important to understand so we can better support each other. And that is mental health, especially when we're in lockdown, we're in quarantine. Many of us have lost jobs. We've lost friends or family. It's a really tough time. And, I've looked at some of the data, just looking at the number of folks seeking treatment, seeking counseling, the number of folks, buying alcohol and cannabis, these are literal record highs. And it's because a lot of us are looking for, we're struggling, and we're trying to find ways to process that and to deal with that. And I'm aiming to make a documentary film about the state of mental health and addiction in America, and to explore a few ways in which we can better support each other, because it really takes a village, and it takes a village across our society, across our country. And so to celebrate 3,000 days sober, I'm aiming to run 3,000 miles across the United States, from New York City on, meet folks that with mental health challenges and addiction challenges along the way, and hopefully shining a light on some of these big issues that are really tough. There are no real simple, easy answers, but I think with more compassion, more kindness, we're going to take a big step in the right direction.
Cut out there for a quick second, but to reiterate, the plan is you're going to run from New York City back to Seattle.
That's right. Yep.
And then along the way, you're going to make scheduled stops or just random stops?
In part, we want to connect with folks that have inspiring stories of how they've worked to overcome challenges in their life, or they're supporting folks in their community who are overcoming challenges. And then the beauty about documentary filmmaking, there's a lot of serendipity. So I'm a huge fan of like Denny's and IHOP, and my goal is to eat as many of those delicious breakfasts as I can while running across the country. And you're some Yahoo with a camerawoman next to you. That's a conversation spark. Hey, I haven't seen you before. What's the deal with the camera? And with their permission, would actually film them sharing part of their story. And the aim is to really just demonstrate that, hey, we are all in this together. And even if we look different, or we talk different, or different education levels, different socioeconomic status, all that, it's actually irrelevant. Mental health and addiction challenges hit everyone from all walks of life. And we want to really showcase that, because I think we're all aware of this. There's never been more division in our society, and I would love to find ways to better stitch us together and to show more universality and commonality, because we're really in this together. And sometimes it takes facing your challenges and understanding the universality of those challenges to get back on the same page and to move forward together.
So are you going to seek these people out, these stories and such, before you take off on the run? Or are you going to kind of go where the day takes you? Or are you going to have a strict schedule like you do everything else in life?
Yes, it'll be a combination. So we've got, luckily, a great team that I'm working with. And so our producer, fellow named Gavin Sullivan, one of the things he'll be up to is like actually researching and scouting and finding some of these really amazing folks, sharing more about our mission, what we're up to, and if get folks on board to share a little bit with our team, because I think that's going to be much more inspiring than just watching this Yahoo running day in, day out. That said, I will need to average 45 miles a day. So like I've got to be pretty regimented and disciplined to do that. But ultimately, I get inspiration from hearing people's story, and especially when you can really level with somebody and share what's really on your mind, what's really in your heart. It that gives me fuel, that gives me fire that I can keep rolling, because it's going to feel like a giant hamster wheel, and it's going to feel I'm going to be in pain physically and mentally from 45 miles a day on these legs. But I want to get that fuel, get that fire, and the best way I do that is I love connecting with like school kids and hearing what they're up to, what excites them. And one bummer of COVID-19, I'm not going to be able to do like the big school assemblies that I initially was hoping, probably. But I'm crossing fingers that we'll have a vaccine in the next several months, although who knows? And I'm on this mission is one where we want to do it as safely as we possibly can. I don't want to be a vector for the virus, and I don't want to get anyone sick from this. And so we want to do it as safely as we can while telling a story that I think is more needed now than ever before.
Now, I remember running a long time ago. And my coach said a comfortable pace was that we could carry on a conversation while we ran long distances. Okay. Are you good at carrying on a conversation while you run?
I love it. And I love listening, especially. So yes, my hope is actually to enlist a few folks to actually run some miles with me out there. And my ask of someone joining me is, hey, like, tell me more about yourself. I want to hear, what makes you smile, what's exciting you, what challenges you're working through, have you worked through, and I want to make some new friends out there, and that's really going to give me a lot of, I think, inspiration for the trail.
All right, I got a little inspiration for you for this project. Besides getting IHOP and Denny to foot the bill for you, do a 5-minute journal or diary. audio wise, that would be really cool if, every day you spent 5 minutes and said, this is what moved me today. And, lend it to your favorite podcaster.
Hey.
Play it out. I think it would be interesting hearing what you had to say the first day versus the last day. And then, of course, the stories in between.
I love that. It's so cool.
You froze, man. You back?
I was saying I was getting animated. I said I love that idea, and that sounds really, really, really awesome.
Awesome. Well, we'll expect it then. Your grandfathered in on that.
Sign me up. You're good. Persuasive.
You're easy. Yeah. It was cool how you engaged the kids, though, and decided to run around the old high school track for a few days and say, come on out and run with me.
Hey.
How many laps were you doing those days? That was a lot.
I did 105 laps, which is a marathon. And boy, that was really tough. It was a 90-degree day in August, and I got smoked, man. Like, it was so hot. So having the water polo team was out there working out. And so it was so much fun. Like, we did I warmed up with them. We did some calisthenics, and then I said, hey, join me. And a number of them came out on the track, which was just a ton of fun to share that experience.
I know you're not as heavy of a stretcher as some runners. You're more of do the calisthenic type warm up. If I know anything about you, I was thinking today, because I've been struggling with my thoughts at night and my sleep and such. Yeah. And I know you have a very full day, and it's probably a lot easier for you to go to sleep, putting in the work that you do. I was wondering what your morning routine is when you first wake up.
Yeah, 100%. And I want to be, fully transparent that COVID has been really tough on my mental health, where feelings of anxiety creep in most every day. And then I've had periodic stretches where I felt pretty depressed and felt really down because I've got all these big ideas, as do most of us, that are totally off track. And I read through my old journal, and it's like, I was supposed to have this fully funded by now, or I'm supposed to be already be doing this thing by now. And that really initially bummed me out, where it's oh man, I'm falling behind. And so for me, building in a great morning routine that works for me has been essential. And it's not just I want to be more productive. It's I want to feel happier. I want to feel more present. I want to feel healthier. And so that's been really, really critical. And so for me, first thing I do is I make my bed, just because I want to have some sense of
accomplishment.
Just an easy check the box. Yes, one thing is done. That just feels good to get going. I then drink a bunch of water. So I have a gallon jug over here in my fridge, and pour out a big tall glass of water, and drink that before I make some green tea. And then it's some Bible, it's some prayer, it's some gentle stretching. I do calisthenics, which is kind of active stretching to get the muscles moving again. One of the challenges of being a distance runner, your muscles get pretty tight. And so you've really got to counteract that with some gentle stretching. And so, I stretch in the morning, stretch in the afternoon, stretch in the evening. Before, after runs, I stretch at least probably an hour and a half a day. Sometimes two. And then I like to write. So I try to do a little bit of journaling about how I'm feeling, what I'm thinking, plans for the day, if anything's on my mind. And then I'll generally have a cup of coffee, a quick little breakfast. And then I try to get into my top 3, which are the 3 big things I want to accomplish for the day. And if I'm on my best behavior, I'll knock out those 3 before I break for lunch, and then train with some afternoon training. And some days, there's a big one that gets kind of stuck, and then I end up having to come back to that after training. But ultimately, I try to really simplify. Keep it simple, stupid is one of my little mantras over here. Just to keep it KISS, man. Yep. And that helps me get more stuff done, actually, and figure out just what's really important, what really moves the needle. And then a lot of the other stuff, it's actually the small stuff. And, we know not to sweat the small stuff, but too often, if we're not prioritizing, everything looks big and scary. And it's no, what are the actual, just couple things that if we accomplish, great stuff happens. And if a lot of the other stuff we can actually put to the side for now.
Yeah. And you get some momentum going if you accomplish those top 3.
100%. And then all of a sudden you feel like Superman or Wonder Woman and you're off to the races. So
what time of day do you usually run? Around 11?
Yeah, depends on the day. Generally early afternoon has been kind of my sweet spot, especially with sort of, the autumn and winter schedule approaching with the shorter days. So yeah, I've done like 4 a.m. training runs for quite a while in Shanghai, but I found here on Bainbridge, afternoons work really well. And I love how the sun looks through the trees. That's like really beautiful. And then the sound, which is really nice when the sun's shining.
Awesome. Yeah, your routine must be all screwed up, being stuck here and not in Shanghai, because you'd go to your office, you work at your startup, you'd run your 15 flights of stairs to get to your office, and then go downstairs and run the parking garage loop, right?
That's right. You've got a great memory, man. That's right.
You got all these daily routines and habits. How has running a business remotely been for you, especially with, kind of the Chinese USA relationship?
Oh man, it's been really, really tough. And it's honestly been tough for like the last 3 years with a lot of the trade war stuff, we've been reading about or watching. There's a real impact. And, I'm a software entrepreneur, was based in Shanghai there for 7 years. And it's big. It's really, really hard as an American-owned, American-led business to do business in China with some of our administration's policies. And any time you're reading about tariffs or you're reading about retaliatory measures by the administration, there are countermeasures that China is then putting on to American-led, American-owned businesses. So I'm not alone in actually exiting China. Thousands of entrepreneurs, thousands of American-owned businesses can no longer, it's no longer the operating environment it once was. And, that's unfortunate because I think we were doing some good. We were helping to bridge China and America a little bit closer by helping students find scholarships for university. And
your project was so ambitious. Yeah.
It's an ambitious project, and it's one that we relied on. I think the goodwill of both peoples and both governments. And when that goodwill dries up, it's much, much harder. So it's there is a cost to this, and I'm feeling that on the personal front, and then I'm also really feeling it for the students that we're not able to help to the same extent that we once were. So it is, and I'm trying to find the silver linings in that, and I'm hopeful that the next chapter will be we'll have a more constructive relationship with China, because ultimately. There are opportunities to collaborate, and yes, there are certain interests that we're going to clash over. But I think you can clash in more respectful ways and in more constructive ways than just sort of the tit for tat game or the kind of draconian blanket bans of things that have a lot of collateral damage. That's probably unintended, but certainly is costly all the same.
So, what's the status of the business now, and are you pulled out of Shanghai?
Yeah, so we've had to downsize our team. So at the beginning of like the trade war, all this nonsense. We had 35 folks, kind of this beehive in Shanghai, and very quickly it's like, look, that's not going to be sustainable with the situation we have. So yeah, we've had to sort of right size and really cut back on a lot of we did a ton of pro bono, free events, free articles, free video series, really just like trying to help as many folks as we possibly could. And when your like revenue streams are basically being turned off by a government conflict, you've got to scale back if you're trying to survive. And so, we're very much kind of we've got the armor on, and we're trying to figure out the next steps here. But it's harder to come by financing. It's way harder to expand, and venture capitalists and others are don't want to touch anything China America related with a 10-foot pole right now. And so you've got to get creative. And we have I work with great people, and so we're trying to make the most, but while acknowledging that it is a tough situation. And we'll see. I'm hopeful for a change, but it's certainly a much, much bigger challenge than me. So our focus is on the controllables. What can we do day in, day out to make things a little bit better? And there's a lot that we can't control in any way. And for that, we're going to just acknowledge that and try to roll forward through our own volition and our own efforts over here.
Controllables. That's a good Scrabble word. I think I'm going to steal that one.
All for you.
I'm married to a doctor, so she kind of cheats with the medical dictionary against me. So you were around for Obama's economic forum. I'm sorry, we're going to talk a little politics. Get off running for a minute because it tis the season. You were well versed during his administration, and he went through, the bailout, and we seem to be having an economic crisis. At least I am. As you found out, you ran to the studio today to meet me, and I forgot to tell you it's been closed since March. So I gave you a little extra work today. I appreciate you.
Running around, that's right.
I appreciate you being flexible. And I'm embarrassed that happened. But back to my question. How do you rate Trump's desire for a certain economic status and what I feel is a superiority to China? I'm bastardizing this question, but can you spot some of the differences in the economics of Trump's administration versus Obama's administration?
Yeah. So I think fundamentally, we've got Trump's America first mentality, which, and then we've got Obama's vantage of the Trans-Pacific Partnership. And to be clear, Trump's America first really in this case means America alone, where we're trying to confront China head to head, which sounds actually okay in theory, perhaps. Hey, if someone is cheating you in a variety of trade arrangements, we need to call a spade, which that actually is an aspect where I think Trump has done that. He has called a spade here. The challenge is China has a lot of other trade partners. And if the United States is going it alone, we have way, way, way less leverage. Whereas in a Trans-Pacific Partnership, yes, with its flaws, at the very least, we have allies where, economically and militarily we're aligned with these folks. And we're able to have a unified front then, which actually gives us far more leverage in a negotiation. So for being, this self-described deal maker, this is a terrible position to make a deal. You actually have way less leverage. You have way poorer fundamentals, and your own people are getting hurt because there's retaliation from China. And you look at the soybean farmers in Iowa and folks in the electronics trade and countless others. Anyone that has a supply chain in China or anyone doing business in China is hurting. Without the Trans-Pacific Partnership in place, it's America alone. And so for a deal maker, I think he should know better. Unfortunately, I think he gets a lot of satisfaction from tweeting, tweeting random stuff at Xi Jinping and the Chinese, which doesn't actually help America's economy. It doesn't actually solve the problem here. So I think it was perhaps well-intentioned, though very poorly executed. Whereas I can at least say the Trans-Pacific Partnership, it could have been a very, very smart architecture to approach this challenge, but was disregarded because of the president's ego. He can't stand that it was Obama's idea and his administration that carried it forward. And so we're left with America alone, which is a very, very bad place to be when you're trying to confront an adversary and build a more advantageous position.
How do we support the Chinese workers? Because yes, they're a good supply chain, manufacturers, things cost less to be worked out through China, but they seem to treat a lot of factory employees poorly, and that it doesn't translate into a lot of Chinese people buying the same goods that they're making. It's hard for me, especially when my goal this year was to understand my sourcing of everything that I put in my body and on my body and where it came from and how it got there, which is a very difficult task to trace. Whatever it is. And I'm not against it coming from anywhere, but I want it to be ethically sustainable and sourced. How do we get to a point where we make a statement to China saying, we do want to do business with you, but you need to treat your own people with more respect?
It's 13 hours.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Robot. 13 hours over here. Great question. And it's one that I think is immensely complex, in part because there isn't as much transparency even locally within China than you'd expect. And an example of this is there's an extensive amount of subcontracting. So, let's say Nike, this big American multinational, has operations in China to make shoes. Well, within that contract that Nike has with its folks, each of those folks have subcontracted factories and sometimes networks of factories that are further subcontracted down. So my take is there is it's super opaque, so much so that I have friends that have worked in supply chain for big, multinationals that don't really know where a lot of their stuff is even sourced from. Yeah, sure, you tour a couple factories, but a lot of this it's dozens or even 100 plus factories go into supplying the parts of a car or the components for a shoe. And when you step foot in a Chinese factory, it's another level. It's a scale that it's hard to comprehend. And yeah, that's a big challenge. I really admire your effort on that because it's a big one. And I think, per QR are going to be part of this because at least that can give you a reliable way of seeing where something goes throughout its lifespan. Although we're not there yet.
I'm sorry, what's going to be a part of it? You cut out for a quick second.
Yeah, I think like blockchain technology and then QR codes give us a new lens to better understand that chain. Because right now, even in the 21st century, electronics age and open internet, there's still so much opaqueness. And I admire the effort that you have because I think that's a really, really important thing we can do as consumers. We have so much power as consumers to direct our hard-earned dollars in directions that we approve of or that we support or that we want to advance. And I think there are a few companies stepping forward that want to be more transparent, want to treat workers better, and let's support those with our dollars. So I commend your effort, and I would love to hear more as you learn more of what's going in your body and on your body. Because that's a great mission.
Well, just know that a restaurant doesn't have to tell you that their salmon is farm raised, and 90% of the salmon on your restaurant table is farm raised.
Yeah, wow.
Something that drove me a little nuts right away. I was like, I want to know that, I have contaminated fish living in their own feces, eating it all the time, right?
Yeah.
You would think that disclaimer had to be on the menu. QR codes too, I think, had a comeback once COVID hit. Because I thought the QR code was kind of dead. And for people that don't know, the QR is like a barcode that you would scan your iPhone or Android phone over, and it would give you information, usually from a website or based on the product and such. But now you scan the QR code when you go into a restaurant because they don't want you touching the menus, right? Yep. So now you're starting to see more and more of that stuff. And everybody's harvesting data, so you got to go in a grocery store, and you can only get a certain price if you have your phone number attached to kind of a QR type reader card. So the QR card's making a comeback for sure. What about you? You've made some comebacks in your life. I remember hearing a story about you on a motorcycle in Vietnam and having a car hit you and getting all scraped up, and then you missed that race, correct? And then you went for a bigger one?
Yep, I was going to run a ultra marathon across the Sahara Desert, and got sideswiped by a drunk driver who then ran away from the scene there in right outside Ho Chi Minh City, Saigon in Vietnam. And so I had to scratch that first race because I could barely walk, given the damage I sustained. But within a year of that, I ran 150 miles across the Gobi Desert, which was just the ultimate blessing to have, to be able to get back into running and to rise from the ashes there, which was really, really tough on the mental health and physical health. But God is great, and that was one more instance of just the innumerable blessings in my life to be able to get back to the thing I love and go explore a wonderful part of the world.
I like how your get back is a 150-mile race. So you're doing this documentary, and you're putting in some training now, trying to get a nice pace of 45 miles a day for how many days? I don't even know how many miles that would be.
About
3,000?
Yeah, 75 days. Yeah.
75 days.
Hamster wheel.
Wow. So let's say you're in the Gobi Desert. Is Gobi a desert?
Yep. Big desert. Yep.
Where did your mind go?
Yep.
During that time.
So yeah, that race particularly was really two halves. So like the first half, it's going phenomenally. I'm in 9th place. I'm feeling really, really good. everything is clicking for me, like the best race I could run. Like I'm, feeling awesome. And then we're crossing a river. You cross 4 rivers during this race up in this big mountain range in Western China. And my foot slips between 2 rocks, and I feel this, and it's like a lightning bolt hits my kneecap. And it ends up being a sprained MCL, which is not something that you want to sprain. You put a lot of weight on that every step, whether you're walking or running. And
very small too.
Yep. And you and your wife wouldn't know better than me, but I can tell you firsthand, it stings when it's not working right. And I had 75 miles to go in that moment. And I had worked so hard to get trained and recovered for this that I was really turning back. It was just, I got to keep rolling forward. And I was very, very lucky to have excellent medical attention there. Dr. Andrew Nyberg from the Stanford Wilderness Clinic, a fellow that really knows the stuff, was able to take a look and tell me, look, you're not going to do any permanent, any long-term or permanent damage, but it's going to hurt a lot. I can help wrap you up. And so he did. And I was limped, hobbled, crawled my way. And what was on my mind is my why. I am out here because I want to really celebrate another day of life. And I want to honor the journey that I'm on. I want to explore this beautiful place. I want to make friends from these wonderful different corners of the world. And I want to push beyond the limits I thought I had. And that moment with a sprained MCL, it all came right there. And I had to take it literally one little step at a time, over and over and over again. And that was going to be the formula. And miraculously, if you keep moving forward, you're going to reach your destination. And that it was the sweetest moment, crossing that finish line, drum circle of locals out, like making music, making noise, dancing, and then just being mobbed by a bunch of folks with big hugs in the pre-COVID era. Just like 10 bear hugs right there to finish it. And really, really special deal.
I think that's what I miss the most, is hugging people.
Yeah. Simpler times, man. Beautiful stuff.
Have you ever done any stem cell stuff where you put stem cells back into your body after they?
I haven't. Nope, I have not.
Nope.
I have not done.
Because sometimes they do that on the meniscus. I was just wondering.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Well, let's talk a little football. Now, yes. I was thinking about all the people that got injured and, who has a good medical staff. And it reminded me against RG3 versus the Seahawks when he went into the tent and was never the same.
Yep.
And then 2 weeks ago, Tyrod Taylor had a cracked rib and they gave him an injection and it punctured his lung. He lost his job over that. But in my mind, he should be suing the medical staff, his future salary, because he was in last year of his deal. He was a starting quarterback, punctured his lung based on the team's incompetence, and then he was replaced. It was horrible.
Terrible. Yeah, that is absolutely terrible.
And he was really a guy that I like to watch play. He was an up-and-coming quarterback for sure. He wasn't, he's no Russ, but who is?
If I'm not mistaken, they were contemporaries in Virginia back in the day. And Tyrod, I think, is a year older maybe. So, there's a fun connection there. And I was so bummed that he, cracking your ribs is no fun at all, but then having a punctured lung, just awful. So I sent him the best for recovery, along with Dak Prescott, quarterback of the Cowboys, who then compound fractured his ankle, which just sounds awful. So
it's kind of ironic because Alex Smith came back after 600 days being out, 18 operations, massive staph infection from a compound leg break that they were thinking they might have to amputate his leg. He might not even live through it. And then the starting quarterback got hurt and he came in and got sacked a few dozen times right away. And I was feeling for him every time he got hit. And then later on in the day, that compound fracture happened to Dak, and it was not a good day in the NFL for a couple of weeks. It seems like it's always knees too, except, Dak's was his ankle, but a lot of ACLs, MCLs, meniscus tears. And if you're out there listening, kids, develop those muscles around your knees, bicycling, cross training, bounding. It's all real important to protect those knees. They take a lot, just like 100%. Your feet. All right. So Russ is cooking. You are the Alaskan Airlines spokesperson for the Seahawks with that awesome commercial. And to remind people, when you were living in Shanghai, you ran how far to get to TV to watch the Seahawks play?
Yeah, so Shanghai's a really big town, 25 million people. Only one bar plays the NFL, and it's Monday at 3 a.m., 4 a.m., 5 a.m., or when games are. So, yeah, it would run 15 miles from my apartment on the far north side all the way past downtown south to watch the games. And Delta Airlines caught wind of that and actually made a little TV commercial about fan culture in Shanghai with a little fun deal on my running as part of that.
Yeah, that was an awesome commercial. They still play that?
I have not, but I get a text and saying, like, saw you in this thing. That's fun. So great memory. And actually, we're coming up on 4 years since we filmed that. So it's been really fun watching the Seahawks with my family now that I'm back, and watching Russ cook is the best part of all. So,
all right, let's talk about Seahawks. What do you think their record's going to be?
I think the schedule's going to tighten up. So we're going to have a prove-it game with the Cardinals and Rams upcoming. I think 12-4 or 13-3. Our defense needs to step up, and part of that's getting healthy with Jamal Adams at safety. If he's dialed in, he tends to improve on the back half of seasons. And so I'm glad Pete's been giving him some rest. So he's back 100%, because a groin injury, which he's been dealing with, is that's really painful, and you can't move laterally or with the kind of confidence, and you need that as a safety to be able to really roam and play center field.
Yeah, I think it's only going to be about 3 weeks. I'm always surprised at, first, Pete's description of anybody's injury. Greg's working hard on that. The thing I'm a bobber on is leg, lower extremity or something. He's so vague about descriptions about injuries. And then you think that most of these injuries are 4 to 6 to 8 week injuries, and guys are back in 2 weeks. It's amazing.
Yep, it is. Modern marvels, man.
Yeah, so I thought we were pretty deep with Hill, Marquise Blair, Diggs, and Adams in the safety position. And we seem to get real thin real quick. DBs as well. Everybody thinks Griffin's a franchise-type player on the corner there, and I feel like he's always playing catch-up. You know what drives me nuts about Griffin is his mouth guard is always dangling.
Yeah.
He never puts it in.
Wouldn't want to do that. That's a crazy thing. So
take it off. Just take it off. Because that thing's got to be flapping in his face while he runs and stuff. And I'm like, why do you even have it? I scream at the TV now.
Yeah. Oh, man. That's a brave soul. I wouldn't want any part of a tackle without a mouth guard in. That is just bold.
KJ Wright seems to be better than ever.
Career
I'm glad he wasn't a salary cap casualty. Michael Dixon, our punter, has been spot on. I see him doing those 70-yard line drives to a certain point. It's pretty incredible.
He is a treasure. Yeah. Australia's finest, man.
Yeah. Who else has been impressing you so far?
DK Metcalf has been, massive second-year leap, and I would already put him on the handful of best receivers in the league. And he and Russ worked hard on their connection this summer. And so when you've got two very, very viable deep, vertical threats with Tyler Lockett, DK going deep, who can also run good routes, more intermediate, it just adds a dimensionality that I don't think the Seahawks have had in a number of years. And so stretching the field in that way is, I think, going to open up running lanes for Chris Carson, and it's going to help us get Greg Olsen and Will Dissly, our tight ends, more engaged here on the back half of the schedule too.
Yeah, I'd like to see more 2 tight end sets and stuff, but Freddie Swain has put his name in the mix there, and
yes, he has.
David Moore seems to be solid as usual, and he's good on kickoffs and punts, and he took a salary hit, and said, "Hey, I just want to be here," and they said, "Okay," and he's getting playing time, and that's something that's special as well.
Not many teams can say that. Places like the New York Jets can't keep anybody, and the Seahawks, folks are willing to take pay cuts to play here. So it's a special culture. Pete Carroll and John Schneider have helped build, and it's just getting started. I mean, that's the beauty about a great program, is it feeds on itself. You're able to attract more great people. Folks invest a lot. And when you've got a quarterback with the integrity, the character, the athleticism, the leadership of Russell Wilson, it is great to be a Seattle fan.
And then you see players coming back too after they get paid elsewhere. Michael Bennett came back here. Who else of late?
Irvin came back.
Who
Unfortunately, Bruce Irvin.
Bruce Irvin, yeah.
Unfortunately, speaking of ACLs, he's out for the year, but he's still around. He's still, being resourced, being helpful. Some great stuff on Twitter too for those in the Twitter sphere. Go check him out.
Yeah, and Cam Chancellor seems to be moving in the coaching direction for sure.
Awesome. I'm a big Bam Bam Cam fan. So
yeah, I think the linebackers have been great. Michael Kendricks came back, right?
Yeah, he's facing insider trading.
He's been facing it for 4 years. So what?
Yeah,
he had an ACL too, and that's why he wasn't on the roster to start, I guess.
Okay, cool. I haven't followed that as closely. I wasn't sure if he was sidelined from injury or the criminal justice stuff. But
yeah, I think DK has been incredible at the start of the season. But the one thing is that he didn't cover the ball when he was going into the end zone and got that stripped, and Rusk lost his nut on him, and I don't blame him. But those guys all seem to work out, in the offseason a lot, and Josh Gordon too. And I'll get back to him in a second. But the guy that didn't was Ursua, and now you saw him on the practice squad, and then he got cut from the practice squad. Now he's back on the practice squad. But he was a draft choice, but he was one of those guys that didn't think he needed to do that extra work, and you see that's not going to work. This is a team environment for sure.
Absolutely. And if you're, these guys have incredible talent, and yet
great chemistry too.
Yep. Hard work's going to beat talent when talent doesn't work hard. So, and luckily the Seahawks, they're grinders, man. They're heads down, they're working it, and it's showing. 5-0, one of 3 undefeated teams in the league right now. And we're about to come up to a prove it part of the schedule. So
yeah, for
let's see how we respond.
I think the Bills might be a catch-22 type game too. But I'm excited. This is the first time I got Red Zone, mostly because Vincenzo's a Cardinal fan, and we don't get Arizona. His cousins live in Arizona. He's a big Larry Fitzgerald fan. So broke down, and plus he's playing a lot of fantasy football and stuff. So, and the fantasy football is sponsored by B.I.Stander Podcast. So shout out to Sports Illustrated Fantasy Football. Thank you very much. They're doing a great job. But yeah, Josh Gordon, it's weird how there's just arbitrary rules that the commissioner doesn't have to rule on Josh Gordon's status. For people that don't know, he lost a family member and relapsed with his addiction. But I have from a really good source that he's actually been here on the island working out pretty regularly. Running sprints, working with a strength trainer over there at Battle Point, and he's ready to go, and he's in contact with the team, and the team wants him there, but NFL doesn't have to tell the team or him what they're going to do. So he's just in limbo.
Yep. And what a double standard where you can beat your girlfriend or wife and still play, and you're having a mental health and addiction issue, and you're just out indefinitely. I mean, for me, that is it is way off the mark, and I'm not the biggest fan of the commissioner. I think there needs to be reforms so that there's a fair process to adjudicate these issues. And, cannabis use or pharmaceutical use under the direction of a doctor, it's wild to me that is going to prevent you from playing the game you love when you need help dealing with big stuff. So, that sounds way off the mark, and it wouldn't be the first time Roger Goodell has erred dramatically with his adjudication.
Especially when marijuana is legal in this state, and he plays in this state, and it's probably the least evil thing that he could have done on the bad list. But it's a cumulative effect as well. Why do you think there's so much stigma on mental illness? We're not all born with the same brain or same desires or thought process. Why do you think it's kind of poo-pooed and pushed down?
I think part of it is there are stigmas, of course, in part due to misconceptions. The science is finally catching up with what I think a number of us have felt intuitively for a while, in showing that a lot of this is beyond our basic control, and a lot of us are just a step or two removed from really serious mental health challenges. And why is it not? Well, I think some of the folks making the rules, whether those are lawmakers in Congress or Roger Goodell is the commissioner, don't directly understand or trying to, ride this moralizing high horse. And that's uncalled for. It's really, I think we need more compassion and kindness and understanding. I think we want to be guided by science instead of by Victorian era misconceptions and stereotypes and stigma, which make it a lot harder for people to be honest about this stuff, myself included. I've dealt with stuff, and when you share what you're going through and you're met with a scoff or with misunderstanding or the feelings of, hey, I'm being stereotyped because of my sharing here, it's a bad feeling, and it makes you want to go back into the shell in which you came. And ultimately, we want to create a more compassionate society. My hope is that COVID-19 is giving us an opportunity to envision the sort of society we want to live together. And I hope part of that is an acknowledgement that a lot of us go through hard times sometimes, and let's give each other a hand up so that we can be there. Let's be more supportive. And when someone's going through a tough time, let's be there in their corner, as opposed to shunning them or putting them on the bad list, like Roger Goodell with Josh Gordon there.
And that reminds me that this podcast is also sponsored by Helpline Services. So if you need mental service, Helpline here on the island is available for you free. Please use the resources. There's a resource guide for almost anything that you need, and there's people that are willing to help you in this village, and you're just as important as the next person. Greg, I don't see you enough, man. Let's do a hike soon. When are you heading out to New York?
Aiming for a March 2021 start. So you'll have, we're going to have some good times on a nice hike here, either a tea or coffee in hand. I'm looking forward to it.
Do you like matcha?
Matcha, cool. Not as much for me, but I want you to do that, and I'll grab a black tea or a coffee.
Yeah, you're caffeinated, aren't you?
I always, man, got to.
Yeah, go. All right. Once again, it's askbys.org this Thursday, October 22nd, 7 to 8, their annual fundraising dinner on Zoom. You can almost smell the food through your computer. And if you can't, Westside Pizza delivers. Shout out to them. And
absolutely.
Maureen, she's selling real estate now, the owner of Westside, but she used to lead the group fitness at Bainbridge Athletic Club. And I remember the first time I took her group exercise class, I thought my heart was going to fail me. And I would just want to shout out to her that you may make some somewhat unhealthy food, but you work it off like a beast.
That's the key.
And Bainbridge Athletic Club is now open too. So, put in your reservation and put in some work and get healthy. And, they say you go to college and you get the freshman 15. I think we stay home and stay huddled and we get the COVID-19 fat content. So I'm going to be inspired by Greg Nance, and I am going to set my top 3 every day. And I'm going to worry about my controllables, which may be my food intake and exercise intake. And I'm going to celebrate each day of life. These are my takeaways from hanging out with Greg Nance today via Zoom, not the gloom tomb of Studio 15 at the barn. Thank you for your time. You've been listening to Bystander. We're going to listen to some spoken word by Mark Owen on the way out. Greg Nance.
Amazing. Tim, thank you. Appreciate you, man. Godspeed.
Always a pleasure. You've been listening to Bystander. Be kind. Thanks, Greg. Take care.
Thank you. Take care, man.
Thank you. I'll see you again soon, okay?
100%. I'm looking forward to that hike.
Hey, Podcastville. Want your spoken word to be heard? We are currently seeking submissions for spoken word and poetry. Send your recorded words to tinytim@thebystanderpodcast.com.
Thinking of things to write, need to realize that everything he spits isn't going to be fire. Coming up with excuses as if he's actually tired, but he's a liar. He's got that energy. He's got that drive, but doesn't want to admit that he's ready and wired. Ready to rage. He wants to tear every page like Hulk Hogan in his younger days, but it's too late. He already envisions the stage. He's that bird that ate the key, ate the cage so he can be free. He wants to capture what's on his mind, put it on paper and fill every line. He writes, but he doesn't feel like it's good enough for earth and vine. He stands in front of the mirror and recites. He watched 8 Mile about 9 times trying to figure out what's his and what's mine. The lights go black. He's ready for the next act. Her memory is holding him back. Looks around the room and all he sees is a 6-pack, unpopped and untapped. Suddenly something in his brain claps. A quick destruction like a moth getting zapped. Her memory has turned to dust. He accepts that it was lust and that's all it was. Gotta move on. Gotta flip the script like a pastor preaching a sermon. Sermon on the Mount. Shed so many tears that he lost count. Why did he ever get bent out of shape? The movie kept playing. It wasn't even his tape. He suffers for someone else's mistakes, so he hits pause trying to figure out the cause. Pain and grief was the cost. He's moving on because her image and memory is lost. Every time she's brought up, it's in the past tense. They see each other and he holds up a fence. She doesn't realize that his new life has commenced.
Hey there. Band of Steves here. If you've enjoyed the music on this podcast and you'd like to learn music, get in touch with me. Electric bass, guitar, theory, voice, production, writing. stevenewtonmusic@gmail.com.
Hey, it's Michael Fabiano now with Sports Illustrated, and I'm here to help you through this wild fantasy football season. To win in fantasy, you need player rankings you can trust, and ours have received the top 5 accuracy award over the last 3 seasons. Sign up for the all-new SI Fantasy Plus at si.com/fantasy. We even have tools that sync with your leagues and experts who are standing by answering your questions in our premium chat. Sign up for SI Fantasy Plus at si.com/fantasy and win your leagues in 2020. That's si.com/fantasy.